We're ready, Councilman Emerson.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this December 1st meeting of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. My name is Tony Emerson, I represent District 4. If the other members of the committee could please introduce themselves.
Neil Dobler, District 7.
Michelle Hofer, District 9.
All right. Well, now that I've started the meeting, I will actually turn it over to Deputy Mayor Dobler, who has graciously agreed to do it since he's there in person.
Thank you, Chair. We will move immediately to approval of the minutes from the September 29th meeting. You have those in front of you. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Taking care of that one. We will now move to item number 3, amended resolution of the 2023 mill and overlay projects. Braxton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This first item that we have in front of you is basically to substitute a couple of mill and overlay projects for ones that we had originally intended to do that were approved in Resolution 9392, specifically Southwest 28th, Southwest 28th Terrace, Brooklyn and Withdean were the ones that we had planned to do mill and overlay. We have since learned that the Utilities Department is planning for water main extension on those roads. I don't like to put down new asphalt overlay and then have it ripped up. So in lieu of those 4 small streets, we have 2 longer runs of Southwest Randolph from 29th to 33rd and Southwest 33rd from Burlingame to McVicker Court that we would like to substitute. They're approximately the same length, so there will be no monetary impact on this substitution. And with that, I would ask for approval of the resolution so we can get it in front of the governing body.
Quick question.
Please.
Will 28th Terrace, et cetera, go back on the list after this is done, or will that be included as part of the water main work?
Typically, they try to limit the amount of asphalt work that they do. So we will look and see, we'll further evaluate after they finish that. Okay.
Okay. I just don't want them to get lost
Yep.
if they still need the mill and overlay work.
Of course, if the utilities wants to do mill and overlay as part of the water line project, I would be too happy to accept that.
All right. You have the item in front of you. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion
Aye.
Aye.
is approved. We will move on to item 4, which is a similar resolution on traffic signals.
Yes. So initially, we had put 2 traffic signal projects in front of this body and the governing body for approval with Resolution 9471. Since that time, we put the 6th and Golden project out for bid. We received the bids. The bids were substantially over the amount of the project budget. That's just the reality of what we've seen in the market. In the last 2 years, traffic signals costs have risen dramatically. And so for that reason, we are increasing the amount of the project budget for 6th and Golden from 305 to just under 600,000, as well as the 17th and Fairlawn from 310 up to 550,000. And with that, I will ask for approval of this body so we can get this in front of the governing body so we can get these projects awarded.
Thank you. I do have a question, but before that, I'll ask the committee any questions.
Okay, I have a quick question. On the 17th and Fairlawn, do you have any idea when that's going to be done? It says 24 to 26, but...
So our target would be to do it next summer if we can get this approved. That particular signal is literally just hanging from a cable over the intersection. I would like to get that on a mast arm. So yes, the 24 through 26 is the CIB budget that was initially approved.
Okay.
Our plan would be to do the project in summer of 2024.
Okay, because I drive past that a lot, and I keep an eye on it. So that's why I'm asking.
How's it working?
It's working fine, but
It's hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
Chairman Emerson, any questions?
No, none, Deputy Mayor, but I would move approval. I guess, I'm sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, but we'll do approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Just a quick question. So basically, replacing a traffic signal is now $600,000.
Yes, sir.
As opposed to the
300,000.
250 or 3 that we used to.
Correct. We
Okay.
used, again, it ultimately falls on me. I should have been asked more questions when the original project budget came through in terms of did we have some very current prices? And when we literally just opened these bids about a month ago, and they were shocking.
The second question is, and clearly I don't think either one of these fall into that category, but as I wind my way through downtown and sat at several intersections with very little traffic and signals, I assume that when these projects come up that we're evaluating the need for a traffic signal at those intersections. We got rid of one at 7th and Quincy that's worked out really well.
Correct, that was an unwarranted, and that is the very first thing that we do, is to look and see whether or not the signals are warranted under the MUTCD. 7th and Quincy was an unwarranted signal. 9th and Quincy, when we get to do that project from Quincy 8th to 10th, that is an unwarranted signal. We will be removing that as part of the project.
Excellent, excellent. All right, if there's no further questions, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion, those opposed, motion passes. Let us move on to item 5, traffic signals once again.
Yes, sir. Initially, we were going to be bringing 5 different locations to you for traffic signals over the course of the next year or two, but given the prices that we have seen on these recent bids, we have had to reshuffle the deck and reprioritize, and these signals at 10th and Washburn and Lane, and 21st and Chelsea, and Independence and Topeka Boulevard, which is one of our oldest traffic signals. These are the ones based on our conversations with the Traffic Operations Division, that these are the ones that they have the most problems with and are the highest priority. So these are the ones that we would like to get moving with on finished design and get these out to bid for construction this year or possibly first part of 2025.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Let's move to item number 6, CIP projects, looks like a River Road.
Yes, sir. This resolution authorizes the construction of the project. We are just finalizing plans and have a good construction cost estimate. This is River Road from Crane to Emmett. Our desire is to get this project done. This is mostly going to be mill and overlay with some full depth improvements. We really can't deviate from the footprint of the existing road because we have the levee on one side and we have railroad on the others. So we're limited to the existing footprint of that. We would like to get this done in 2024 so that it's done in advance of PQV, because we anticipate that there will be quite a bit of traffic that will use this particular road as a detour once we start closing the bridges for PQV. And with that, ask for approval and would gladly stand to answer any questions that you have.
All right, any questions from the body?
Yes.
Go
This
ahead.
came up last night because of all of the utility projects, road closures. And we're looking at possibly closing off Kansas Avenue. That's would have been one of my go-to routes if I take the back route, go down Crane, go River Road, over the Surrey Bridge, back into North Topeka. How long do we have a tentative time for starting and a tentative 90 days, 120 days, anything like that yet?
I'm going to guess 120 days, given the fact that it is largely mill and overlay, and then we're limited full depth repair. So, hopefully it's 90, but I would say 120 worst case scenario.
And would it have to be done asphalt season, I'm assuming?
Yes, ma'am.
So what, May?
Typically,
June?
middle of April is when the batch plants open, and then this year, we're hoping middle of December for the closing. I'm hoping that the batch plants will all be up and running next week, so I can get a lot of asphalt down. We've got highs in the 50s, and our conversations with Bettis is that they plan to be open next week. So typically, you can plan on middle of April until 1st of December.
Okay, next question is, I know it's mainly regular drivers, but I don't know if UPS uses that road. I'm assuming you're going to avoid hills, dock doors as much as you can, or get it done quickly. But
Correct.
have both of them been contacted? They're the closest big truck driver companies near it.
Right, so typically, we don't have the robust public hearing until we have the contractor on site, because in my experience, I can have the design consultant and public works staff there, and we can give our best guess of how we would build it, but the contractor might take a different look at it. And so our public engagement, our public meeting that we will be after we have the contractor on board. And this obviously is, we want to get this out on the street to bid, because this is going to be weather dependent and time dependent. So it would be this spring of 2024 is when we would be doing that robust public engagement, and obviously Hills needs to be at that meeting.
And the people who are in the Santa Fe office building there, about midway between Emmett and Crane.
Where the title insurance company is, yeah.
And there's a contractor in there that I know, so that'll be important for them being able to access their offices.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to be able to tell them that this is coming and expect something about this time period.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes. All right, item number 7 is Topeka Traffic Impact Study.
That would be me as well.
All right.
In conversations with the development community, I feel that we could do a better job in terms of providing clear guidance to developers in terms of what we're looking for a traffic impact study. And currently, it's a 2-page document that leaves a lot of ambiguity. We've been assisted by Benish, who has developed traffic impact study guidelines for a number of cities, including Overland Park. There's been a lot of discussion that we've had, and just to not belabor this, but just to kind of highlight some of the main points of this, we've identified a half a dozen situations in which a traffic impact study is not required. And then in lieu of just having unfettered discretion in terms of when a study is required, we're doing it on an objective database, which is the increase in the amount of vehicles per hour. So if it is a small amount of vehicles per hour, say 0 to 20, then you're only going to be required to have a level 1 study, which is, when you kick back to page 7, you can see that there are really only 3 things that you need to do. You need to give me a location description, tell me what the land use is, and then the trip generation out of the last ITE manual. That's it. You're done. Okay? Once you get into significant amount of volume increase of 100 and 500 as the threshold levels, that would then trigger a level 3 or level 4 study, which needs to be much more robust. And we have provided just an informational table in terms of what that would look like to trigger a level 3 or level 4 study. And for example, if you are having a hotel, that means you would have to have 170 units in there that would trigger a level 3 study. If it's an office park, level 4 is triggered with 375,000 square feet. Supermarket, again, we've got some examples there in terms of the table so that a developer looking at this would say, oh, I can see from my development, it's only going to require a level 1 or a level 4. Then in addition, we have gone through and have identified a number of issues that we have seen problems with. We've provided some input on that in terms of what would be required. We've, in addition, included a checklist at the back in terms of what items would need to be done as we get experience operating into this. We plan to put on the website examples of well-written traffic impact studies so that there are examples out there for a developer or for their engineering consultant to look to in terms of what our expectations are. And the whole purpose behind this is to provide some clarity, and guidelines to the traffic engineering consultants and the developers so they know what our expectations are, because what we want to do is we want to make this process fair, fast, equitable, and at the end of the day, we want the development to succeed. And really what we're looking at in the traffic impact analysis is what is going to be the impact both on the traveled way, the intersections. Is it going to be effective? Because if it's not effective, that business is not going to thrive. So that is it in a nutshell. Rhiannon and her team have been participating in the discussions. If she wants to add some additional comments or if you have any questions, gladly stand for those.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Is this just a first look? We're not voting on it, or are we?
No, I'm sharing this information to be completely transparent. This is going to be an administrative decision that would be by the public works staff would be implementing these guidelines.
Okay.
Not a council decision.
I admit I didn't have a chance to read much of this one. Got most everything else, but this one was a little longer. So
It's a dry read as well, I will admit.
I wouldn't doubt that.
For most people.
Well, I'm thinking in particular one previous zoning case that was very contentious and kept asking for a traffic study. I'm hoping this addresses some of their concerns and tells them at what level it pushes it to a higher level of traffic study.
Correct.
So they have some guidelines, and it's just not saying, well, it just doesn't rise to it. They have something they can look at and say, oh, well, this is the guideline.
Correct.
That's what I'm hoping this is going to do.
Well, I think that this eliminates a lot of the gray because it is clearly objectively based, and it is what is the amount of volume increase per hour that your development is going to cause, right? And it should be based on that, because if I'm only increasing by 10 vehicles per hour, I should be able to provide an entirely different study than if I'm increasing it by 700 vehicles per hour, right? Because the impact that 10 vehicles per hour is going to have on a arterial road is completely different than the impact increase of 750 additional vehicles per hour.
Yeah, it's a difference between a multifamily development versus the new middle school for Washburn Rural. They're completely different. One really triggers a lot more study than the smaller development.
Correct.
So if this helps, I'm all for it.
How much, Braxton, how much input from the development consultant community have you had on this?
We thank you. That's a good point, and I will take the hit on that. We have not had impact because we have not put it out to the development community. And certainly if that's a recommendation that prior to implementing it, we contact and have a roundtable discussion with the local consultants, I'm happy to do that, and the developers as well.
I think that's probably a good move. I think that we've done that in the past with stormwater regulations and things like that, so that makes sense. Chairman Emerson, any questions?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Copley, first of all, thank you for all your work on this. I do appreciate you taking a look at this because this has been, I think, has been a contentious subject. And as you said, the previous policy was pretty ambiguous, I guess. I did have a couple questions, and I'm sure this, people that deal in this all the time know, but just for my and anybody watching's use, on the number of units, like where it's square footage, is that the square footage of the new building, or is that the square footage of the property? And this is like on the chart on page 5.
That would be not the size of the property, it'd be the size of the development that they're constructing. So if, let's say it's a hotel or single-family residential or commercial manufacturing, so it wouldn't be 135,000 square feet lot, it would be a manufacturing building of 135,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you. Because I can see that being obviously, it's not hard to have a 135,000 square foot site on any of these, but that obviously the size of the building, it's okay. That's probably the easiest question. The other thing, a couple things I noticed in here was one of the things under the existing policy, it had some silly kind of impacts. We had, for instance, there was a liquor store in a strip mall that simply wanted to add a drive-through, and it wasn't really going to join, a bunch more trips. But in the old policy, there was a drive-through window, no matter the vehicles per hour, would automatically necessitate a traffic impact study. Even existing building moving, within the existing thing, adding that. And in that case, will give credit to Bill Finder. He did in that case intercede and said, no, it's silly, but I see on here that under number 3, it still says, notwithstanding basically vehicles per hour, the development sites of the proposed drive-through or convenience store will require TIS unless the city traffic engineer specifically determines it's not necessary. And I just wonder, I love the way this is going with vehicle trips being the trigger, and to me, though, that's kind of getting back to where we were. I wonder if you might want to take a look at that, maybe about maybe not having that.
Yeah, I have no problem striking that, because the bottom line is it should be triggered by an objective standard. So an example would be, if I have a business, I'm going to simply cut a hole in the wall and add a drive-through for convenience, but it's not going to increase the amount of vehicles. I don't believe a TIS should be required, right? So I have no problem striking that sentence.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I guess my more general comment will be, we have areas of town, and I'm thinking specifically of South Topeka Boulevard here, but we have a lot of inner city places that are needing of redevelopment. And what I don't see in here, my reading of this is that kind of the historical traffic counts you use in determining the delta between what it is now and what it will be under the proposed development is what it was within the last 12 months, if I read that right. I guess my question is, for areas where, I guess I'll just use White Lakes. We know White Lakes Mall was there. There weren't any traffic problems that I can recall. Generally by that one, that was, 88, I guess, was still up and going well. So for areas, especially where we want infill and redevelopment, can the developer use those historic traffic counts to determine whether or not they need an impact study done?
No, so I think what you're asking for is, can we exempt development if it's redevelopment on a corridor where there had previously been commercial development? And I don't support that. I think that it needs to be driven, it needs to be factually driven, it needs to be driven by the current traffic counts, and it also needs to be driven by the trip generation set forth in the ITE manual. Because different types of commercial businesses, for example, if I have a Gordman's and I am changing the use of that to a completely different thing, and I'm adding a couple of high-intensity drive-through fast food restaurants on there, I need to make sure that the intersection and the signalization of that intersection is going to function. And honestly, it's to make sure that it's going to be safe and it's going to be efficient. And because the businesses are not going to thrive if people cannot safely and efficiently get in and out of there. So I think that it necessarily has to be fact-driven based on the current facts, current traffic counts, and what the proposed land use is. And I don't believe that it would be fair or reasonable to say, just because it had been a commercial development 25 or 30 years ago, you don't have to have a traffic impact study now. I don't think that that would be in the city's best interest or in the development's best interest.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Mr. Copley, I might not have asked the question, and because I totally agree with what you said. I guess my question is though, what do you use to determine the delta, the increase? And can you go back and say, hey, this, I guess not to use White Lakes, but use something else in South Topeka as an example. There used to be a Red Lobster used to be there at 29th and, man, I guess that's Madison, Monroe. I don't know. It's west of Kansas. Anyway, if you were going to put the same exact square footage of restaurant there, could you use the counts from when it was the previous to determine what the delta?
Right. So if I'm understanding the question would be if there was a Red Lobster in a particular building and that building closed down and it sat dormant for 10 years and I'm going to put another restaurant in that is of the same nature, then the delta in terms of vehicles per hour would be restaurant versus restaurant, correct? But if I'm taking the restaurant down and I'm building a Casey's, then I can tell you that there's probably going to be a different trip generation based on that new use, and the delta would need to be between the restaurant and the convenience store.
Yes, absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm asking.
Okay. Yes, and that I believe that is absolutely a fair interpretation of what we would be looking for.
Okay, I have no problem then.
All right, any other questions? Just one more question on 4.0. There's some language that I guess I question at the end. So the state of Kansas determines the qualifications to be a professional engineer. You go through a licensing process, which there is no specific traffic engineer. It's basically civil engineering covers most of that, and yet it looks like the public works director is going to make the final determination as to whether a particular engineer is qualified to complete a TIS for the project. How are you going to do that?
I can tell you that the TISs that we've had the biggest issues with are the more complicated ones. And in discussions with our consultant who has been doing that review, it would appear that the person does not have a lot of experience doing a traffic analysis. So it would be if we get to a point where the questions are not being answered and we're getting resubmittals that are not addressing the material issues, that would be at that point at the discretion would be to ask for someone that has that experience preparing a traffic study.
Does the city require an engineer to seal a site plan that's done for private development?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head if the site plan needs to be sealed.
Really? Okay.
I
I question that, but I guess where I'm going is a developer's hiring an engineer privately to do the traffic study. And yet the city's going to make the determination, and presumably the traffic engineer has a PE. And Public Works is going to now tell that developer whether that engineer is qualified or not?
I absolutely see your point. I don't have a problem striking that last sentence because I had the same initial concern about this, right? But I will say that by making it discretionary, I look at it as you've hired a professional, they should be responsible and they can either do it or not. And if they can't do it, then the developer should be the one making the decision, right? So I don't have a problem striking that last sentence.
I
Or
would
the last two
suggest that.
sentences.
Yeah. I mean, the recommendation to have a PTOE for level, you can make whatever recommendations and you want, but I think the last sentence should be
Yep.
gone.
Thank you. Good comment.
Very good.
We
Thank
will
you.
eliminate that sentence as well.
All right, appreciate it. And along with the other committee members, appreciate putting this together. I think it makes a lot of sense and makes things more straightforward for folks doing development here. Any other questions? All right, and there's no action required on that, so we'll move on to item 8, which from traffic studies to elevators.
Yes, sir. Again, this is, as a starting point, as part of the recently adopted CIP, the firm was removed and is now being funded out of cash as opposed to GO bonds. Further, so this is truly being brought to you in terms of full disclosure. This does not require council action. Just want you to be aware under the old CIP adoption, it was anything that was in the firm needed to be approved by this committee and the governing body. That changed in this last CIP to now any standalone project of over 250,000 needs to be approved by this committee and by the governing body. But for the fact that this firm was removed from the CIP because it's now being cash funded, I think that it's a matter of just being transparent and letting you know, but I don't believe that you need to approve this. I can tell you that we have had issues with the City Hall elevator. The last time that it went out, it was a problem with the control board. At that time, the contractor was able to do a Band-Aid fix, telling us that the control board is beyond its useful life and that parts are extremely difficult to source for that. The problem is you can't just go and change the control board in and of itself. It actually needs to be a complete modernization because of the connection that the control board has with machine room equipment, as well as the door, the hoistway, all of that. So this $288,000 is a complete rehabilitation of the elevator. What we've been told is right now it's about 90 days or 3 months in terms of when we would place the order to being able to have the parts. We're living on borrowed time. I would hate to have the elevator go out again and us say, well, sorry, we can't get the parts for 3 months, right? So that's why we want to go ahead and get these ordered and then get once the parts come in, go ahead and get it scheduled. Good news, bad news with doing the major renovation and the HVAC work is that we have only half the number of employees in there, but we do have some contractors that are constantly going up and down the elevator. You know, it'd be some inconvenience to them, but there's some workarounds there in terms of them bringing a crane back on site to be able to lift things up to the 3rd floor. So that's where we are, really just full disclosure, trying to be transparent in terms of how we're spending city money and why.
Thank you. Any questions? Chairman Emerson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Copley, I apologize. I know you sent us a memo on this. I don't know if I read the whole thing or not. But will this basically be, will it basically be a new elevator at that point, except for maybe the outer doors and stuff?
Correct. Effectively, all of the working parts and the brains of it will all be new.
Great. I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah. Is this a separate contract from the work that's doing now?
Yes, ma'am. This is separate and
Complete.
distinct. This was not part of the budget for the HVAC work. This is going to come out of the firm, basically our rehabilitation, our facilities rehabilitation fund that we need to. So we'll have to basically push back 288,000 of other dollars of things, right? That will have to be pushed back because this is a higher priority. I mean, it's one of those things where unfortunately we have to make tough decisions on it on a daily basis, and having a functioning elevator in City Hall is a very high priority, particularly when we get it back open, because I've got to be able to fully comply with the ADA, right?
Okay, so as soon as the parts come in, then they'll start working on it?
Then we will schedule the work to be able to minimize the impact on the employees that we have, as well as the contractors' employees.
Okay. It'd be nice if it would hit right when we're transitioning between the basement and third and the first and second. And that'd be probably the least disruptive time.
Right, and right now we are on February, March is what we're looking like in terms of making that transition from phase 1 to phase 2.
If it doesn't break down before then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we have no action?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, if there's no other questions, it takes care of all of our items. We do have an opportunity for other items or discussions. I don't know, utilities or, yes, please.
Yes. Oh. Okay.
All right, good morning. I wanted to take the opportunity this morning to bring to your attention some projects that we think, as a utilities department, we want to be transparent up front with you all. Prior to the 2024 CIP, utility projects haven't been required to go through the additional approval process when they are ready for construction. So starting in 2024, we're prepared to start bringing those projects to the Public Infrastructure Committee for approval as per the ordinance. However, there's 4 projects that we currently have active. 3 are in construction. 1 is in the process of being awarded so that it can start construction. Those 4 projects are mentioned in this memo. They are utilizing 2024 funding. They were approved in previous CIB and went through the existing process at that time. So utilities has a long history of utilizing multiple years of funding to do some of their projects. So because we were tossing around how we were going to do this so that we met the new expectations with wanting to get that approval, but they're already in construction. So just in an act of transparency, we wanted to bring these to you, and we felt that perhaps a memo just highlighting that would at least let you all have an idea of what's going on. And then if there's still the desire to do that, we have a resolution prepared if you want to go through. It just seemed pretty awkward to try to do that after the fact. So.
Great, thank you. So to reiterate, these are all projects that were initiated obviously prior to the end of 2023. The requirement to take these projects through for approval doesn't start till 2024, so these are kind of
Yeah. Caught in
transitional
limbo.
projects. Makes sense to me to not run them through the process at this point, since they're already under construction or have been bid, and we'll kick off with the bigger projects then, starting in 2024. Is there any questions or discussions? See heads nodding, so it looks like we're good there. Appreciate you bringing
Okay,
this in
sure.
front of us.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's all I had.
All right, great. Planning, anybody else? All right. If there's no other business in front of the committee, we are adjourned.